Good morning, everyone. It's Monday, March 8th. From the San Antonio Express News, my name is Luis Vasquez, and this is your Express Briefing. All of the stories you need to know to start your day. You can expect a high of 68 degrees under cloudy skies in San Antonio today. It should remain mostly cloudy this week with chances of rain later in the week. CPS Energy customers won't see extra charges on their February bills stemming from the winter storm that iced over Texas last month. In less good news, the CDC published a study showing evidence that COVID restrictions, such as the mask requirements that Governor Greg Abbott rescinded, clearly decrease COVID cases and deaths, while opening up restaurants causes them to spike. And now let's move on to our top stories for the day. Four years ago, city and state officials had reimagined Alamo Plaza as a vehicle-free area, partly lowered and enclosed with handrails to mark the site of the historic Spanish Indigenous Mission and 1836 fort with limited access during daytime hours. The plan had buy-in from the city, state general land office, and deep-pocketed benefactors who would help raise funds for the $450 million public-private project. Today, the ambitious plan is on life support. Alamo and Houston Street will likely remain open to traffic for several years. The flagstone-covered plaza might not be lowered 18 inches to its historic 1836 surface, and the cenotaph will remain in place. The question now is, what can be salvaged from the grand reimagining of the most historic site in Texas? The full-throttle reopening of bars and restaurants across the state Wednesday is a serious issue for a hospitality industry pummeled by COVID-19 rules for almost a year now. Many restaurants have decided to stick with their 75% occupancy setups they have now and require their staffs and customers to wear masks. But the burden of enforcing those rules now falls entirely to the restaurants, and many are wondering just how to do that, and whether they even should. On the one hand is the desire to keep their staff and the public safe, but after a year of the pandemic driving profits into the ground for most of the state's hospitality industry, operators are hesitant to turn away any paying customers. 2 days after an Arctic storm began its week-long assault on San Antonio, the head of the city-owned electric utility gave an optimistic prognosis. With warmer temperatures on the way, power outages would be over by the end of the week. Hours later, utility officials had a different message for city leaders. Texas was on the verge of a catastrophic power failure. The starkly different assessments illustrate gaps in what city officials knew about the unfolding crisis, a string of information outages that hindered officials in responding to the blackouts and in communicating with constituents shivering in darkened homes. Joshua Fechter has more in his latest article. As new revelations about the handling of the state's power crisis continue to come to light, critics are accusing Governor Greg Abbott of holding irrelevant but headline-grabbing news conferences to distract from the state's failure to manage the grid. Democrats and other political observers say Abbott is indulging his supporters in an effort to steer the conversation away from the power crisis, which left millions without heat and electricity for days in sub-freezing temperatures and is linked to dozens of deaths statewide. Abbott's unrelated news conferences have earned praise from GOP lawmakers who previously denounced the mask mandate as government overreach and those who have taken issue with social media companies for their banning policies. Kayla Harris has more in her latest article. A San Antonio family has sued a funeral home, claiming the facility failed to pick up their father's body from a hospital for cremation, so it was deemed abandoned and Bexar County buried him in a pauper's grave. The plaintiffs are daughter of Arthur Martinez, who was 83 when he died on June 28th from complications of COVID-19 at Northeast Baptist Hospital. Their lawsuit seeks a jury trial and monetary damages of more than $1 million. For more stories like this, head over to expressnews.com and sign up for our new Courts and Crime newsletter, The Docket. Next up are your need-to-know headlines. You can find all of these headlines and more inside of your Express News subscription. San Antonio will add 10,000 first-dose vaccination appointment slots at the Alamo Dome. Bexar County residents will be able to register for an appointment starting at 6 p.m. Monday on the Metropolitan Health District's vaccine registration website. The state of the COVID-19 pandemic in San Antonio continued to improve Sunday as officials reported lower hospitalization numbers, 2 new deaths, and just 15 new cases. Still, city officials are reminding residents that the pandemic is not over and that safety measures are as important as ever, especially as schools let out for spring break. A caseload swelled by the COVID-19 pandemic has created a need for more staff at the Bexar County Medical Examiner's Office. County commissioners approved spending $230,000 to hire more employees because of the increased workload. The FBI has arrested a Canyon Lake man who allegedly took liquor shots in House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's office after he and hundreds of others breached the U.S. Capitol in January. The Public Utility Commission's new chairman said he opposed reversing the electricity pricing put in place during the recent power crisis, despite the conclusion by the state's market watchdog that the emergency measure overcharged Texans by $16 billion. Lieutenant General Laura Richardson, commanding general of the U.S. Army North in San Antonio, has been nominated to receive her 4th star and to lead the Pentagon's Southern Command. If the promotion is confirmed by the Senate, Richardson would be just the 2nd current serving female 4-star officer in the nation's military. Negotiators with the city of San Antonio and the police union clashed in the 3rd day of contract talks over how much authority Police Chief William McManus should have to punish officers accused of misconduct. Head over to expressnews.com to see where things stand. A panel appointed by Mayor Ron Nirenberg to investigate how the city and its 2 utilities handled the devastating winter storm last month likely will set its sights on how the city and its utilities communicated with each other and the public before and after the crisis hit. After closing its theaters in March as the coronavirus pandemic took hold, Regal Cinemas allegedly stopped paying its rent for Fiesta Stadium 16 location at Northside Shopping Center. 1 year later, its landlord's patience has run out. With a warming planet making heavy downpours more likely, hurricanes more powerful, and droughts more long-lasting, resiliency is more important than ever, writes Chris Tomlinson, adding, quote, "We need to make sure another polar vortex does not trigger another Texas blackout. We also need to review our other disaster plans." Columnist Gilbert Garcia writes, quote, "Self-governing is a concept meant for situations where the only life at risk is your own." Read his latest column, quote, "Abbott trusts Texans to self-govern, except when he doesn't." After years of stops and starts, setbacks and disappointments, Mayor Ron Nirenberg's call for modifications to the Alamo Plaza redevelopment plan holds enormous potential, writes Elena Ayala. You can read her full column for more on the reset that could get the project done. This week in history, on March 14, 1930, ground was officially broken for the new San Antonio Light building at Broadway and 5th Street. Mayor C.M. Chambers broke ground Friday for the new home of the San Antonio Light, which is now being erected at Broadway and 5th Street. The Light's new plant will be one of the most modern in the country. That, according to a photo caption read on the front page of the San Antonio Light. Bill Lyons, the longtime owner of 2-story downtown restaurants, Casa Rio on the Riverwalk, and the street-level delicatessen Shiloh's, isn't retiring anytime soon. He said he still finds his employees a joy to work with, and he still enjoys greeting regulars at his restaurant, which he has owned for more than 4 decades. He spoke with the Express News about his business successes and more recent struggles. You can check out the full Q&A over at expressnews.com. Six Flags Fiesta Texas hopes a new thrill ride will entice guests to come back. The steampunk-inspired ride, Daredevil Dive Flying Machines, gives passengers a sense of weightlessness with aerial banks, loops, and dives. Its base rises 48 feet with 4-seat cars attached to its legs. We have everything you need to know about the new ride over at expressnews.com. In San Antonio, we're mostly used to gorditas with a deep-fried corn tortilla pulled apart and stuffed like a Hot Pocket. The Happy Gordita does not serve those, but the guacamole is so good we're willing to adapt. Read our latest 52 weeks of food truck reviews over at expressnews.com. UIW defensive end Chance Main, now a junior and a team captain, has come a long way since he was featured on Season 4 of Netflix's Last Chance U. Read more about his journey over on our website. For the second consecutive season, and for only the fourth time in 44 All-Star games since 1976, the Spurs did not have a representative in Sunday's NBA All-Star game. It also had us wondering, who's the San Antonio Spurs' next All-Star? Calvin Finch has advice for San Antonio's freeze-damaged tropical plants, sago palms, pride of Barbados, and more. In his latest Down to Earth column, Neil Sperry answers the most common readers' questions about winter storm damage to palm trees, live oaks, and more. And that's all for today. This was your Express briefing for Monday, March 8th. My name is Luis Vasquez. Please consider becoming an Express News subscriber to get in-depth coverage on all the stories you heard today. Also, be sure to rate and review this podcast inside of your Apple Podcast app, as it really helps the show. Have a wonderful day, everyone.